Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to the ranking members and the chairwomen that are here with us today. Certainly, this isn't easy for many of us who have been horrified, and I do mean horrified by the actions, recent actions of ICE and CBP under this administration. ICE has and continues to terrorize our communities with threats of raids themselves. In the last 6 months, 4 Guatemalan children have died in U.S. custody. That's just the last 6 months. And this does not include the 3 babies that were found over the weekend with that young mom. I've traveled with my colleagues to the border and personally have seen many of the conditions in the detention centers. It's unbelievable that as powerful as Congress is, that we have not been able to even regulate the temperature in which these babies are being held. That is really shocking and a terrible reality. Even with the surge that we have seen recently, those conditions are unacceptable. I have seen children shivering in cells on the floor with nothing but a toilet in the middle and giant industrial fans blowing to keep the air moving because there's a toilet in the middle of the cell. Facilities were the only place to provide CPR for a sick child, was the same table where people ate. These were not things that were told to me. These are things that I observed for myself. So it's not easy for many of us to give these agencies that have had very, very little oversight and lack of compassion more money. But the situation at the border is real. HHS is running out of money, and kids are stuck in cells without the very basics. Soap and a toothbrush is mildly interesting when you think about the lack of toddler or baby-appropriate food that they're not getting if you're 6 months and older and still not nursing. As a grandma and as a mom, I simply can't turn a blind eye to that. And we shouldn't let this administration off the hook. We must do our part to resolve this situation, and we can't let this administration use congressional inaction as an excuse for the horrible conditions at the border. In this bill, I am really happy to see that all of you have worked so hard to deliver on many of the priorities that members who have visited the border have addressed and identified for you. For example, $92 million for food, water, sanitary items, blankets, and other consumables for immigrants. $20 million for medical support, including mobile medical services. So I hope that with that money, we will no longer be utilizing a table in a lunchroom to give CPR to a dying child. $35 million for transportation of migrants from Border Patrol stations to alleviate overcrowding and expedite processing. And with that money, I hope that we will not have another case where a child dies in our custody while being sent from one facility to another. $200 million for an integrated multi-agency processing center pilot program, a pilot program for families of and unaccompanied children with collaboration of nonprofit organizations that have proven that they have been able to do this a lot better than our folks. It restricts the use of funds made available under this title to only the purposes specifically described. And I think that that is a very important clause for many of our members that don't want to see this money that is badly needed to help alleviate the pressures at our border for other purposes other than that. And Chairwoman Roybal-Allard, the Office of Inspector General is getting $5 million to provide funding for the Inspector General to conduct oversight of activities in the Unaccompanied Children Program funded through emergency. This is what we have been complaining about, that these facilities are not inspected but once every 3 years. So would you clarify for me how many additional inspections would be granted under this money, or we could expect under this? I'm sorry, DeLauro, Chairwoman DeLauro. Can you speak on that mic?
We require $5 million to be transferred to the Office of the Inspector General to conduct oversight of the funding. What I will tell you is I don't have a specific number of inspections. However, with regard to the Inspector General at HHS, and I think one of the things that I did many months ago, and Congressman Cole will attest to this, is that I did a closed-door briefing from our Inspector General at HHS for the full subcommittee, a bipartisan subcommittee, so that they could tell us what they were finding. They are continuing in that process. It is through revelations from the Inspector General that we have been able to address some of these issues to correct what they have found. They are continuing to do the inspections. I do not have a specific number, but I can tell you that the Inspector General's office has been aggressive, and that's why we wanted to provide them with funding to be able to review what is happening, to inspect what is going on, so that we can make the corrections. They were also the agency that uncovered that the separation policy, in fact, did not begin in 2018, but in fact, it began in 2017, which we had no knowledge of when, in moving forward. So I just think that's money very, very well spent. They are also doing work, and we are going to have a hearing with them again with regard to the influx facilities and the contracts that go out to the influx facilities and what the conditions are. We were doing something like that in July with the help of the Inspector General.
And to the speaking to those facilities that we are contracting with, what is the liability as far as inspecting? Are we to see additional inspections at those facilities or real-time inspection at these facilities?
Yes, yeah. No, that's what we are. What I said is that, look, we all have wanted to address the humanitarian crisis. And I spoke to Secretary Azar a while ago, and even at our hearing, when we did another hearing on unaccompanied children, I said to him that I wanted to provide the resources that are necessary. However, that what we needed to do was to build in protections for the children, and the reason why we were doing the protections is because what we uncovered in the past, that these children were not being protected. That's when we laid out the ways in which we could safeguard them while they're in these facilities. And as I mentioned in my testimony, for the very first time, these emergency shelters will have to abide by the standards of care for children in the same way that those who are licensed, state licensed are, and meeting the requirements of Flores, that now these emergency shelters have to abide by those, and it's mandated that they abide by those standards.
It's important to me and many of our members that we ensure accountability and transparency on how this money is spent.
Let me just say this, because and thank God for great staff. For any such unlicensed facility in operation for more than 3 consecutive months, ORR shall conduct a minimum of 1 comprehensive monitoring visit during the first 3 months of operation, with quarterly monitoring visits thereafter.
So one time, within the first 3 months, they have to go
right.
and inspect it, and
And
then
then
thereafter,
quarterly.
every 4 months,
That's right.
they have to inspect
That's
it.
right.
And currently, they're inspecting once every 3 years. So that in itself,
So-
I think it's a great improvement to ensure that we're holding people accountable. My concern is, I want to make sure that we're not giving money to continue by simply giving money without providing some, basic standards on how they should operate, because they have proven that they're not able to operate in a decent manner unless we tell them and order them to do so. So the only way that I can be assured of that is to have that language. So thank you for including that.
It's in the bill, and I would just say, in addition to the protections, there's the money. And again, I said to the secretary, you can have the money tomorrow, but we build in protections for the kids, and also, though, that there has to be a way to carry out the mission of HHS, which is a safe placement as expeditiously as possible. So it's not about just holding people in detention, but how do we make sure that we are bringing forward the sponsors so that, in fact, these children can get to a safe placement. The 3 pieces have got to be there: the dollars for the crisis and being able to house them, the protections, and the pathway to moving them into a safe placement.
The other issue, there are 2 other issues. One is of denial of member visits. Can you clarify that?
Yes, and this is in the House bill. I want to just, I will quote it.
Where I'm going-
No
where-
notice. You can just go and visit.
Where I'm going with that is, we should not be finding out about horrific placements and detentions, and finding out that there are 350 children being held in a facility, and surprise how we find out about that is not through the department, but through a news article. And thank God for great reporting, that those reporters were able to report that information out to us. And
Let me give you the line. The House bill requires facilities caring for unaccompanied children to allow oversight visits from members of Congress without requiring members to provide advanced notification. Quite frankly, the Senate bill requires advance notice of 2 business days.
And lastly, I want to congratulate you in including this specific language. The other issue that irks me is the lack of response from the Northern Triangle governments. Their lack of, caring for the people that are having to flee because of major issues of corruption, gang violence, and the drug cartels. So in this bill, it clarifies the intent of prior year appropriations for Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador, which specifically require these governments to take steps to curb migration and improve border security. So thank you for including that. That is something that it was a surprise to me that we would be still trying to address the root causes of migration while providing emergency funding for the people that are here. We're never going to completely deal with the issue in our southern border until we focus on the lack of involvement from the Northern Triangle. So that encourages me a great deal. I want to yield back by saying that I support the bill and thank you for doing so much work and so much time that it took. I know it wasn't easy. It's not easy. It's not the perfect, but it is a good bill, and I yield back.